Hey guys, it's me Eric. It is SoyMilkTalk with me on today on March 28th, Saturday, 2020. I don't really have anything in particular to talk about really in positive light. There's just so many things on the news that people are watching, and I think that there are things that kind of bug me a little bit with the people that I know, especially when you're reading on social media. I think that in itself is kind of scary and can influence a lot of people and important people in the world. But there are things about the internet that can positively enable a lot of people to do much better in the world. But I think that there are much more negative things that they say that it takes 3 or 4 good things to counteract a bad thing. And I think that does say a lot in terms of looking at news that are in terms of people doing really bad things, kind of like bandwagoning towards people, and maybe there are particular situations that might have happened to them, but we're not sure until they're proven innocent. And so I think that people jumping the gun fairly quickly is something that is not healthy in terms of a relative society as a whole in a community, because I think that we might not understand a particular individual of why they did that. And sometimes we usually kind of just sit behind our own screens on our phones and kind of think about particular things that only selfishly, as individuals or people, as human beings, we are selfish in some ways, that we are only for ourselves first before we help others. And that is not a bad thing, in particular with following what you want to do. Everyone ends up having a goal that they want to do. Losing weight, having a milkshake, using, not sponsored by soy milk, but really it's just having to have something that work towards and accomplish things in life. And I think doing something like that is a little bit more fulfilling, and self-gratification, satisfaction is an important thing. And for granted, we as a society or individual people who are watching this, maybe I think that I take that for granted, at least for a couple of years, and did not realize how lucky I am, particularly in being able to live in a home like this. There are things that I do kind of question a little bit, and I think that this also has to do with imposter syndrome, or something about people saying white guilt, or anything in particular that's quite interesting, and phrases that you read on the news. And I have a lot of friends who are white or Caucasian, or meaning customers who are Caucasian or black or Mexican or Hispanic, and all those people are have their own things in life, and they have something that they have to do and take care of. And having the leisure of time to talk about things like this in particular, just sitting down with a milkshake, drinking soy milk, it's kind of quite interesting. If you want to know, like, for why I picked drinking soy milk rather than milk, is actually really because it's just the hormones. I think in particular having to drink a lot of dairy milk, so I do kind of switch it off on off for dairy milk and soy milk, and those things are kind of good to balance, and then too much of something's not too good. So I drink this probably about twice a week, or maybe 3 times a week, depending on how I feel. Definitely too much protein can give you constipation, so you do want to make sure you drink a lot of fiber or eat a lot of fiber if you're going to make smoothies out of that too. Other than that, going back to the self-gratification, as well as being the situation at the moment, buying TP and toilet paper, TP is short for toilet paper, those kind of things are really funny in terms of people freaking out. And understandably that it makes sense, but the people who actually buy all the toilet paper out and then sell it for a higher margin for price gouging, that is definitely not a humanly Christian way of following things. But in and of itself, throughout mankind and history, you could probably see, I think it was Shakespeare, if I remember off the top of my head, there was a bit of information where he bought wheat, and he bought all the wheat around the surrounding area and sold it for 3 times or 8 times the price. and he got caught because of, in particular, not paying his taxes, which is quite funny because taxes are always involved when a government is wanting to arrest someone. So that is one of those things that a lot of people are not, let's see, not too fond of you avoiding taxes. So at the end of the story as well, I think you should pay your taxes, but also not be an asshole at the same time for just selling a lot of price gouging during an epidemic situation. But I think that in this situation, we're eventually going to have a total shutdown. I think that with the stimulus package, with the small business SBA, Small Business Administration, a lot of that money is actually going throughout the United States, and we have about $2 trillion that's going to be spread out through each individual, businesses, corporations, and tax breaks. All these things are a huge stimulus package, which should avoid a economic shutdown. Or not economic shutdown, but an economic recession, which we are currently in one, since everyone's not buying really anything, not going out to drink, not going out to watch a movie, not going out to buy cars, any type of services that are particular that has run to the United States. I think the statistics, they say that 70% of the United States of economic drive is through customer service or service industries. And so you say that 70% of the industries are shut down. We have 30% of our GDPs from people who are working on essential goods. And so those things are really important. And I think that having to have that and not being a piece of crap human being, I think a lot of these things are definitely going to help. And calling those people out, I think that they are their own right and they're individuals. And I don't think that, you have this kind of thing when you think about, like I say, I think that if you are going to be buying something a lot of, should you do it in particular that in your conscious? And I think that it's quite interesting that people kind of impulsively do those things. And I know I have a tendency to do those as well. But in some ways, in reality, thinking logically, I don't end up really doing those. But having those thoughts of like, man, well, I wonder what it's going to feel like if I stuck a fork in an electric plug. Is it going to shock me? Oh yeah, heck yeah, it's going to shock you. And so some people that actually just instinctively do those kind of things. And I think that having to learn those things as well and having a penalty kind of makes sense as a government as a whole. And there are so many things that I want to talk about. It's quite funny thinking about, the conspiracy of like COVID-19. People thinking about, man, this is like the Chinese flu, and I'm like, well, yeah, it's from China, like the majority of like China, but we have like the Black Death or the plague or the swine flu, H1N1, those types of things. A lot of the flus come from internationally who are third world countries or second world countries who have health problems and can't really educate the entire system because of corruption or because of how massive the scale is. And people don't realize how large China is as well. I think the racism that we see online is probably the minuscule things that we see. And I know I'm probably particularly like survivor biased in terms of looking at what happens to me as opposed to what happens to others. I think that I also understand that looking at other people, hearing from other people, there is definitely racism towards the COVID-19 or the SARS-CoV-2. And there's a bunch of other things that they call it. I think that ultimately it makes sense that you can call it the Wuhan virus, but when you stick a stereotype or a demographic to a particular virus and call it the Kung Fu virus, I think that's a little bit tiny racism, which ironically it's kind of funny though. But then again, I mean, most Chinese people don't really care about that stuff when you're just calling them like, racism or like Chinese food and stuff like that. Of course it hurts our feelings, but we don't really show any emotions because we don't like to have any type of conflict with people. I think we as a society, especially in culturally in Chinese, is that conflict is something that we try to avoid in some ways and form. And if we don't get sometimes like in a particular way that we like, we might get blown up, or how we might hold our emotions in until something really dramatically happens. And being pushed to the edge, I think that that is something that in a particular person do not want to see. And it's like every other person, you know. And I think that it's quite funny seeing people laugh about this situation, as well as not taking it seriously. With everything in particular in terms of like the stereotype or the racism, I think that having to have a lack of information as well, from the information that, you know, China in particular knew about this flu, and they blocked a lot of the information coming in the United States. And the WHO organization was also in particular, as I would say, at fault. There's a lot of things with the organizations worldwide, World Health Organization, is definitely at fault as well as of the United States. And I think that being so relaxed about the situation for some particular people is quite dangerous. And it does kind of worry me a little bit, especially people who are near me. They definitely have some survivor bias that I do notice that these people experience. But, you know, you can't really do anything other than just letting them know and be like, hey, you know, what you said kind of worries me a little bit, saying that, so for instance, let me go back for a bit, that if a person tells you, man, you're not going to get it, statistically you're not going to get a really high, your statistics is really low actually, I'm sorry, to get the virus. And people are freaking about it, and you shouldn't even worry about it. It's so dumb. Your generation of people who are like millennials are going to be freaking out because you watch the news too much and the media is blowing up. It's all your fault. And you know, you kind of sit there and you think, wow, this guy's like, he's my friend, but he's like kind of crazy right now. I think that this is definitely the wrong way of thinking, I would say. I'm not going to say that he's wrong in everything about it, but I do think that, you know, having to think that way is kind of dangerous, and having without a second input. I think having to have a strong situation like that kind of does worry me a little bit, you know. And he is a particular person that I feel like if I do confrontation with, which I've had in the past, he would not particularly like that. So as an individual, I kind of try not to stay close to him, even though he is an acquaintance of mine, and it's okay. I think that in particular, that individual understands the percentage of what's going on, and as a society, generally that people are scared. But I think that for him, he does have a legitimate claim where we do kind of blow up a lot of things on the news and make it panic ridden, where people are going out and buying TP or buying all the soap. And as a result, we're as a society kind of, you know, put a large strand of demand on grocery people or people who are stocking the shelves, and older people or people who are immunosuppressant, who definitely need those types of cleaning products or agents, toilet papers, any of those particular things. But I mean, you can just make your own TP at home if you want to, if we are in a, you know, a nuclear war out, or if resources are very limited. But we're still going society. Electric's still running, water's still running, gas is still running. And so I think in particular, so for some people, it's not something that's too worrisome that people should not be too worried about. I think we should definitely be worried more about the small businesses and staying at home, and having to have definitely that stimulus package of the SBA for small businesses, and especially for individuals who are working freelancing. Those types of things that actually can help you, if you're watching this video, who are watching this, can apply for that and see. I think about, for an SBA loan, you can get $10,000 without any questions. And these are particular things that are something that's much quicker out of the gate. And as long as you follow those procedures where people who are paying, or you're paying your business employees, then it makes sense that you get to keep it, as well as including a loan. and you just only have to pay the interest that's on that loan, and it's forgiven if you keep your promise on, paying the rent, the electricity, the daily operations of a business. And I think this is the right direction that the government is taking. I do applaud them, but in some ways it's really slow. I think we could have prevented this or gotten this much shorter in terms of the period of people freaking out. And China definitely has done a large economic impact on the United States. This is something that will probably be forever written in U.S. history. We probably remember this within 50 years from now, along with the Great Depression as well as this recession. And I think economics, I'm not really particularly, not interested, but not really particularly informed about what this is going to be called. And they could be anything from the COVID-19 or 2020 or 2019. I think it's more 2020 since the current year of what we're living in. The 2020, the Great Secession. People might think secession as from the 2018 or 2008, I'm sorry. And that particular instances might be different. So other than that, I think that as a society, we're still hanging here. We still have our house over our heads, where we have situations we are going through, and people who, or the college kids who are going through spring break and having this quarantine, I'm just stay inside. It's definitely not worth spreading it to older people. I think that is something that's quite terrifying that I see. Having a lack of acknowledgement around people who are near you is quite terrifying. And just stay at home and wash your hands. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that's all you got to do. I think that if we as a society held down for a month, I think 6 to 8 weeks is the time that they say quarantine should be held, that we should be able to go back to normal and flatten the curve of what hospitals' capacities are able to take care of people who are needing a ventilator or an ICU. And if we do that as a society, I think we can definitely make this out within a year's end. And I hope that this is something that we can work towards for. But I don't know. I'm just a person who's just talking with a soy milk protein shake. So other than that, I'll see you guys later. I hope you like this video. If you guys like it, just let me know. If you don't like it, just tell me why you don't like it. I think maybe that for me, talking about this kind of stuff does help me a little bit in getting my mind off of particular stuff, of the stresses I'm thinking about externally and internally. I worry about a lot of people outside of my family and inside my family. And so this is something that is kind of like a journal or diary for me. But other than that, I'll see you guys later. I hope you guys have a great day. And just be safe out there. Wash your hands. Make sure you cough into your arms or whatever, and wash your hands afterwards. But all right, I'll see you guys later.